Hey gang, it's me once again. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be as you listen to this message. Now, today I've decided to do something that I've never done before, to go through my Twitter and to show you some of the comments that people make and get your opinion on it. Now, so here is Zintle Zimbini. I don't know who that is. These are the things that comes through Twitter. You know Twitter is international, but she obviously is a South African, and she shares her experience. I met a Zimbabwean lady at the mall today carrying a baby, and her armpits were so smelly even when passing by. My mom politely advised her to observe good hygiene, especially with a baby, because poor hygiene can make a baby sick. I want to know what's the beef of Zimbabweans with the roll-on. Okay, that's interesting. I thought that her mother's advice, the way in which she illustrates that it was done here, was proper, but now her question, I guess it's more like a rhetoric question. I don't think she needs an answer. But obviously that's going to trigger certain individuals, as it clearly did Ngoma Kurira. Now, the name and the surname gives it away that he's a Zimbabwean. He says, in the mid-2000s, when I used to work in South Africa, I saw a racist white South Africans insulting black South Africans, saying they smell and don't bath, and some would refuse to sit next to you or even spray deodorant or some sort of insult in the workplace. We all know, he says, we all know the history of this insult. So I'm now shocked that black South Africans are using this white supremacist tactic. Is it really a white supremacist tactic to observe a person? I'm black. I've observed a lot of black people without assigning or attributing to them their, where they come from. I'm talking about South Africans. And without necessarily indicating where the person coming from. Some even from my tribe, for that matter, from the same ethnic tribe or ethnic group where I come from, who do not like to use a roll-on. I remember very well, for example, one guy had smelled the perfume that I had used, and he went on to say, wow, you're using a perfume, how are your ancestors going to know where you are, how are they going to recognize you, and all that nonsense, that mambo jumbo. So I don't think this has got anything to do with race, Ngoma Kurira. I hope you see this video, because I had observed somebody, not one person, multiple people. This is just about hygiene. I think you guys will tell me what you think. The obsession that South Africans have with poor Zimbabweans is nauseating. Okay, that's absolute nonsense. I stay with a Zimbabwean in my house, have been for the past 12 years, and she's my helper. That's absolute nonsense. An absolute garbage. I treat her as my family member. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to buy such nonsense. It's common white supremacy. I don't see how that is a white supremacist tactic. Seeing that I, being a Xhosa, have smelled another Xhosa person. If you smell, you smell. It's just that simple. And the reason for the smell, I think, has something to do with the fact that you didn't take care of your hygiene. If you do not apply your roll-on and you go to the office, for those people who do not use a spray, a perfume, you feel very uncomfortable if you are a conscious person about cleanliness and neatness. The moment there is a smell in the room, you may even think that it is you. So I'm not quite sure how is this attributed. Now, of course, if it came from a white person to a black person, race hustlers, this becomes a default position. But for me, I think it is better if you know that, look, there may be something wrong with me. I've, for an example, years ago, suggested that a person needed to go to the skin doctor and get to see if there's anything that they could recommend, because some people's armpits, they resist roll-on, right? And some individuals, this specific individual rather, was recommended a Dove, D-O-V-E, roll-on, which is very, I think it's a Dove, D-O-V-E, and the person never smelled it thereafter. So sometimes there is a reason for the smell, I think. I don't think it should be called a white supremacist. I don't think white people are necessarily experts in cleanliness. I don't think therefore it should be called. I have come across a white person that didn't smell very nicely, and later on picked up, this person was junior to me as an employee at work. At the time I was what to call working, and it came across that even his juniors were also picking up the same smell. You get the point? It just becomes difficult when you have to relay the message to the person to say, look, of course I had to relay the message, but it becomes difficult when you have to relay the message to the individual. So you rather call the group of people to say you have observed this, because people easily take things to the extreme. As you can see here, Ngoma Kurira is taking this matter. I think that he's offended by the fact that a fellow country person has been said that they are smelling. Now, what does Luella say? Luella says, sometimes roll-on deodorants are very pricey. Stop being judgmental. Okay, I don't think telling a person that they're smelling is being judgmental. I think we are losing a sense of decency and a sense of being truthful. You can tell the truth in love. I would say, for example, from what Luella is saying, that it depends on how the person passed the message. You may be correct when you're saying stop being judgmental, depending on how the person told. For example, this comment here made here by Zintle, up until she asked the question in the last sentence, it sounded like a good comment that was well-meaning. She was like passing a message of what had happened in her experience. So she was sharing with us her experience on a particular day. But then when she says, I want to know what's the beef of Zimbabweans with the roll-on, I mean, as I've already said, I've stayed with a Zimbabwean in my house for 12 years. She does not have a problem of armpit. She's a very clean somebody. So I do not attribute such uncleanliness with Zimbabweans. If anything, I have experienced this with South Africans, both black and white, as I've already indicated, that even within my ethnic group. So it's got nothing to do with any particular ethnicity. This is what I think, guys. And then, so Luella, you may be right when you say stop being judgmental. Because I think you are picking up on the last line that says what's the beef, and then now you generalize that all these individuals. It's not necessarily correct that Zimbabweans have smelly armpits, and it may be that they do, it may be that they don't. I just have not experienced it, so I can't speak to Zintle. Is it Zintle? Zintle's experience, yes. But it certainly got nothing to do with racism. And then Madam Seko says, but this is true. We don't wash our hair as often as them. We braid for weeks and we are still good with no fleas. If they stay 5 days without a wash, they get fleas. So this comment was taken out of context. I agree 100% to make it racist. I agree with you 100%. This comment was certainly taken out of context to make it sound racist, because the truth of the matter is this: when you have not done certain things, right, you can feel that when your mouth is not fresh as a man or as a woman. You can feel when your mouth is not fresh. You can feel when you yourself are not fresh, right? Some of us wash twice a day, right? I'm talking about your body, and then still apply the roll-ons and all that, and wash our hands so many times a day before we do any activity with our hands that mixes the hands to a mouth, right? And then you brush your mouth so many times a day, and we pass on this to our children. That's how, and some men, for an example, if I may add my own here, some men don't like to use chewing gums to refresh their mouth, even though they could feel themselves that their mouth is not fresh, and then they want to talk in close proximity to other people, and that is and others have not been trained in hygiene, how to keep your mouth hygienic, right? So they don't do flossing and so on and so forth, right? Now, if you don't do flossing and don't clean your mouth, then there's gonna be problems there, and this got nothing to do with skin color. And then myself at Tembi says, no, not you bringing whites when there's no need for two. I too choose white South Africans over Zimbabweans. Okay, I think the point she's making is that there's no need to bring whites here to say that this is a white supremacist tactic, because if you smell, you do smell. And I subscribe to that 100%, even though I would not necessarily generalize and say, just because, for example, I had smelled a person who was a white Afrikaner or a Xhosa, do I now go around believing that all Xhosas smell? The answer to that is no. And do I now believe that white Afrikaners smell? The answer to that is no. But this particular one, I had observed over a period of time when they came to my office smell. My office was left with an odor that was not there prior to his coming, right? And I'm very conscious about those things. My office always has got freshness about it, right? So then one of the employees brought the same thing to my office. And it just happened that after the person had left, I was spraying my office and one of my employees came in. And they assumed that I was doing that because of the individual that was there. I said, no, I'm not doing that because of the person. But then they unveiled to me that indeed this individual does have a sense of smell that is not pleasant to your nostrils. Nevertheless, once you admit that most of you don't bath, don't use a roll-on, then maybe we can talk about solutions. You are still in denial. You are still in denial. The sun will be so hot, 35 degrees Celsius, and we will be stuck with a smelly Zimbabwe person in a public transport. Okay, look, Tapi, I get it, but I don't know how you know that the person is from Zimbabwe. And it may be factually correct, and there's nothing wrong with necessarily saying that the person is Zimbabwean. It's such that people have now been trained to be oversensitive. There is microaggression, people respond in a certain manner. When you, for example, I'm a Xhosa, as I've already indicated, and I did come across a Xhosa person who found it very strange that I was applying a perfume as a man. And no wonder in the process of time, also discovered that there was a time where he didn't use a roll-on, and I brought this to his attention. And he confessed that no, he part-times these things because he wants his ancestors to smell him, to know and recognize him, which is, in my view, it's completely nonsensical. But in his worldview, he believes that, and the people around him, apparently, they are able to tolerate that. You understand? And this is a pity about some of these things, that some people have these belief systems that causes them it's reasonably hot in some places in South Africa. If you go to the north, right, it's quite hot. It gets to 40 degrees Celsius sometimes, and therefore it's very important for people to be fresh, right? I mean, when I come to the gym, having washed or taken a shower, I do a thorough washing thereafter. Why? I wouldn't want to subject my children or any of my friends, I wouldn't like to subject their nostrils to a terrible odor or smell, bodily odor that proceeds from myself at all. Hence, one needs just to be conscious and not be in denial. So Tapi's point is, for me, very, very valid. Not necessarily towards Zimbabweans, but towards anybody who doesn't like to use proper hygiene. Now here is someone who calls himself, I speak fluent Kawish. It's not South African girls in England. We don't know if it's true. They don't wash hair like Zimbos, don't roll on. So Susifaka, just apply roll on, okay? He's just replying to the other one. I have no comment on that. Because I do think that these things affect everybody regardless of their country where they come from. Anyone who don't have the means will have smelly armpits. Well, I'm not quite sure how truthful that is. It may be that it is indeed the case, but there is a reason why children, even up to 12-year-old, up until teens, don't have smelly armpits if they don't steal their parents' roll-ons. There's a reason for that. And by the way, I'm saying this, I've got children who are already over 21. So the point I'm trying to make here is simple, to say if you use a roll-on, children will normally smell armpits. Even us, when we were growing and we were children, we used to observe certain children's armpits smelled and our armpits did not smell. And the reason for that, we discovered later, was because they were using their elder brothers or elder sisters roll on, but they were stealing it. So when it was no longer available, then the armpit will smell. So if your armpit is not used to using a roll on, it's just normal perspiration as a child, there's no way it's going to be smelling unless you have an issue that you need to see a doctor, a dermatologist. That's the doctor that you need to see. If your child, for example, has never used a roll on at all, and you are fully aware of that, and you start smelling their armpits there and before the age where you feel that they should be using a roll on, then take them to a dermatologist. It may be a problem that is sickness related that can be cured, okay? And the same is true with adults who are, the dermatologists are quite good in solving some of these problems. And also the ophthalmologist, for those who are having did I say ophthalmologist? No, the orthodontist, for those who are having a problem with smelling what we call mouth, because some of these things are just diseases that can, when cured, you suddenly have you can laugh until you see your last tooth in your mouth, and you can continue for hours on end without having a smelling breath. Now, Olga Nyamakope, in Doris' lessons, The Grass is Singing, Mary said to Moses, okay, now that Mary said to Moses, the black villagers that visited her shop had bad odor. Moses responded, they also say you have bad odor. Bad odor isn't unique to blacks or Zimbos. It's basically people don't make targeted xenophobic comments. It's basically the point that I was making, Olga, that this is not exclusive to any specific tribes. That's why I quickly went to my own experience with a Xhosa male and an Afrikaner male. There's many other groups that I could mention. However, for me, it doesn't serve a purpose, because it can create a wrong impression to people to say this particular group is like this. No, anybody who takes good care of themselves doesn't have to be having an unpleasant smell. There are people who, when they come into your house, when they leave, you literally have to, if you don't have the sprays that will keep the scent inside your house nicely, you have to open your windows and so on and so forth. There are people who leave their smell inside your car when they come, and some people have a very strong bodily odor, and it's not necessarily the armpits, and for some others it's the armpits. So hence I'm saying it just depends. It's situational. It's certainly not Zimbabweans, and it's got nothing to do with white people using that ukubukula abantu abamnyama. What's the gentleman's name? Ngoma Kurira. I understand Ngoma Kurira, South Africans can be xenophobic. I'm a South African. I understand that. But sometimes these things are they are exaggerated, and I think you have exaggerated your point. Gibson says there's no deep phenomenon here. Tina as a band, we've always questioned the hygiene yabelungu. Abagezi. That's actually very true. They don't mind splashing their face in the kitchen sink. Very, very true. And that's what I discovered about the African that I was working with, because when I brought that to his attention, he started smelling like the rest of us. Why? And he confessed. He started taking a bath and a shower every morning, because for them it's a non-issue not to wash on Monday, or maybe when they were swimming on Sunday, and then they wake up on Monday and they go to work without having washed. So it's actually very true. This is a very, very valid point, to which I've also had an experience that I can testify to. So she says there's no deep phenomenon here. That's true. So we used to say, we used to question, or rather, Tina as a band, we've always questioned the hygiene yabelungu. Abagezi, meaning they don't like to bath and they don't mind splashing their face in the kitchen sink. We know why it's to be anti-hygiene. That's why it confuses us when we see Africans refuse to ukugeza, meaning to bath. The funny thing is, they are the cleanest people ever. Right? Okay. That is now I'm me. Zama Klasibe. All nations have those people who smell 100%. Some South Africans smell, including whites, but Zimbabwean smell is extremely strong. It could even kill. Okay, now that is exaggerated. I'm so glad I don't go anywhere near ShopRite. Okay, those are general remarks that will cause Kurira to be mad, and I don't necessarily share that sentiment at all, because that is true of South Africans of all walks. It's just a matter of hygiene. Yeah, then I'll leave it at that. I mean, this is almost it's 20 minutes already. There are people, and I'm gonna post this, by the way, on YouTube. Né? There are people who don't believe in using roll-ons and perfumes. Yes, I've met one. South Africans are like black and white. Maybe we notice them more when they don't bath than often because of the conditions they live under. Very, very true. There are people who don't believe in roll-ons. And by the way, the roll-ons do have the effect, whether you ascribe a meaning to it being negative or positive, that's up to you. But as I have said to you, when we were children, when we were teenagers, we noticed one particular boy whom we used to tease, because children are very naughty, as you know. If you were once a child, you would know what I'm talking about. When we were children, we used to tease this boy because he used to have smelly armpits, until we discovered he used to steal his elder brother's roll-on. And so when his elder brother's roll-on was not available for him to steal, his armpits would remain smelling. Some of us, for example, only started using a roll-on when we were around about 16 to 19, and we never had a problem of smelling armpits. And because we used to play all manner of sports, would fight with one another, it was easy to pick up that there's something wrong with the bodily odor of a specific individual. Nevertheless, I think that's enough. What Charmaine says, to be honest, it's hygiene issue, not a tribal or whatever. I agree with that 100%. I know for a fact that 9 to 10, if I go to public area, someone's hair is going to be smelly. Learn to wash them braids and those awful smelling wigs. 100% correct. I mean, for example, as an adult, and I've already said to you, I've got, my firstborn is over 21 years old. As an adult, my hair is washed every day. When I have hair, when I have cheese scalp, my head is washed every day. You get the point? And sometimes, in fact, not sometimes, most of the times, twice a day. Nevertheless, I mean, just imagine, I split, okay, this is a response. Just roll instead of defending usage of roll-on. It's a fact that zippos in general are not roll-on conscious. Okay, look, I'm a person, if you have listened to my channel, you would understand I'm not into stereotyping people. I don't want to sound arrogant, but I read quite a lot. And I'm well-traveled. I can never, ever use stereotypes. Stereotypes are used everywhere. Kurira has a point here. However, he has overstated his point. And however, for example, he says in the mid-2000s, when I used to work in South Africa, I saw racist white people, blah, blah, blah. The point is that he has overstated his point. Because if in the mid-2000s he was working already, I suppose he's a good 10 to 15 years old, 15 years younger than myself, or he may be in around about the same age as myself. I don't know. But the point I'm making is this. He seems to be well traveled, therefore he should know better than to generalize. He's trying to correct someone who used a generalization in Zintle. Therefore, when you're trying to do that, it's very important for your points to be made factually, and you leave it at that, because ultimately facts have absolutely nothing to do with feelings. This is Zintle Zimbini's experience. It's not your experience, so you can't dispute it by now trying to make racist out of it. Zintle is sharing her experience, that this is what happened. And now we could ask Zintle questions which Ngoma did not ask. How do you know that the person was from Zimbabwe, for an example? So we have to assume now that what Zintle is saying is factually correct and comment within the confines of Zintle's comment, in the absence of anybody disputing that the person that Zintle met was Zimbabwe. And it is incorrect to suppose that when they had seen that and this woman was carrying a baby and Zinhle's mother did the elderly thing to do, which African people do, to go and correct that, and then now Zinhle jokingly makes a statement that says, I want to know what is the beef. Now I understand why that may sound offensive, because it's a generalization, but it's not really offensive, to be honest with you, because I'm not oversensitive. But I understand why then Ngoma responds the way that he does. But for me, he then falls prey of the very thing he's trying to correct. Nevertheless, this was interesting in exercise for me to do. And it's also, I think I probably will do it more. And you guys will tell me if you appreciate this or not. For now, let me check out. Have a lovely one. Ciao, ciao. Bye.